we'll start with this. Rick Ramos, trainer extraordinaire, none other than reigning welterweight undisputed champion Jessica McCaskill tweeted, "Jessica and I are heading to the UK next month. Hashtag Rick Ramos Boxing." One is left to wonder what the nature of the trip is. Are they there to talk shop, do business? Who knows? I want to say that Rick Ramos himself expressed some discontent over Katie Taylor's next opponent choice, if you even want to call it that, as Jennifer Hearn of El Paso, Texas. She's a mandatory challenger by way of the IBF.
So is it even really a choice?
She's got to get her out of the way if she wants to hang on to the blue belt, the IBF title in the lightweight division. And then, like now, I maintain my original position that this is a prelude to something bigger. That's the pattern we've been seeing with Katie Taylor's fights. You know, the Miriam Gutierrez fight. That was just a prelude for the Jonas Showdown. And this fight with Jennifer Hearn, I believe that this fight, it may be a mandated title defense, it might be, but it's just a prelude to something bigger. Perhaps a Jessica McCaskill rematch? I don't think the door's closed on that. I don't think that's off the table. I still feel in my heart of hearts that Rick Ramos and Jessica McCaskill have a better working relationship with Eddie Hearn and the people over there at Matchroom than, say, Amanda Serrano and her team. And that
the door's not closed for that fight.
The door's not closed for Taylor versus McCaskill II. Even if Katie isn't facing her straight away, even if she's now facing her mandatory challenger, Jennifer Hearn, should she beat Jennifer, I could see a rematch between Katie and Jessica happening, at least before I see a fight between Katie and Amanda happening.
Because I don't think Amanda really wants that fight.
Oh, she might mention Katie in passing, mention the fight in passing here and there, but we see what she's been doing. It looks a lot like she's looking for an alternative, any alternative, to a Katie Taylor fight. And if she was acting big in the britches before, making things difficult, how much more difficult is she going to be after this appearance she's set to make on Triller?
What are the purse demands going to look like then?
Didn't she ask for something like a 60-40 split with Katie Taylor? Not trying to rain on anybody's parade, I'm just giving it to you straight. I see a lot of difficulties associated with trying to make that Amanda Serrano fight because the fight itself was basically done and she walked away from it. So
who says Eddie Hearn and Katie Taylor still even want it?
I don't think Eddie Hearn and Katie Taylor have the hard feelings with Jessica McCaskill and Rick Ramos that they might have with Amanda Serrano and Jordan Maldonado. I think that comparatively, Matchroom has had a better working relationship with Jessica McCaskill and Rick Ramos than what they've had with Amanda. And I think based on that, the door is still open for a rematch between Katie and Jessica. The way I look at it, I wouldn't rule out either fight because boxing oftentimes is fluid and unpredictable. Almost anything is possible. However, not everything is likely. And I view a McCaskill rematch as being likelier to happen than an Amanda Serrano fight. Moreover, I do feel that Katie's next fight is just a prelude to something bigger. So what that bigger thing might be a McCaskill rematch for all the belts at 147 pounds. We'll see what happens. In other news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now, by way of Mike Coppinger via his sources, the deal for an undisputed title fight between Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant is 100% dead. If Canelo plans to fight on September 18th, he'll need to secure a foe and platform quickly. A Dimitri Bivol title tilt on DAZN is a possibility. Coppinger added, if we're not going to get Canelo versus Plant, I hope we see Plant against either David Benavidez or Jermall Charlo in the future. For Alvarez, you'd have to expect Bivol or Artur Beterbiev as the most likely options. I'd still love to see Canelo versus Triple G3 too, but don't bet on it. And any one of those fights is a possibility, though some fights are more possible than others.
Since this fight's collapsed,
A lot of people out there right now are actively engaged in the blame game, and this is one time where you can't blame a fight's collapse on Eddie Hearn the way some of you might like to. No, Eddie Hearn wasn't a party to these negotiations. Eddie Hearn himself said, from our side, I've been kept up to speed with the Alvarez-Plant situation with Eddie Reynoso, and kind of left the lawyers to deal with that fight, Hearn told co-hosts Barack Bess and Akeem Reyes, "We know the undisputed fight is the one Alvarez wants to make. Obviously, it wasn't able to get over the line for September 18th, and now we've got to look at either the alternatives or, to remain working on that fight. So I don't know whether the fight is dead. It is.
Dead.
Perhaps there's some more work to do on that, but certainly it now looks unlikely for September the 18th. He added that, "No, I'm not out of it at all," Hearn explained, "but, our proposal was to do the fight on DAZN, We had a proposal with the team to do the fight with PBC on Fox Sports pay-per-view, which was, in principle, accepted by Saul. And, I was happy for him to do that because I want him to take the undisputed fight. I'm not involved in, I'm not the lead promoter of the show. I'm not involved in putting that together. What I am is on the Canelo Alvarez team." The thing is, Barack, I'm not going to start, Hearn said. Throwing my toys out of the playpen and worrying about ego, about letting Canelo Alvarez take an undisputed fight. He told me I'm his guy. He told me I'm his promoter. I'm happy with that. I don't think that anyone would be jumping through hoops from the PBC side for me to be involved. So, I'm staying representing Canelo Alvarez. I don't want to get involved. I'm not making comments on Caleb Plant's comments about Alvarez's demands. That was the beauty of being a network free agent, was that, was the ability to do that. And we couldn't get that fight on DAZN, so we moved forward with that direction. Unfortunately, that hasn't materialized for September 18th. We'll see what happens. I spoke to Saul last night. I spoke to Eddie Reynoso last night. We talked about some other opponents. Of course, I'm still sure that there's some options to pursue in terms of seeing if the Plant fight is possible, perhaps on another date. But, that's where we're at right now. And as I read through all of this, I can't help but think to myself and echo a very familiar sentiment you guys have heard me express already in reference to this same subject, that the fight happening should not be contingent on Fox being the platform. I mean, it really shouldn't.
That shouldn't be non-negotiable.
That should be entirely negotiable, because DAZN is fully capable of doing this fight and giving Caleb Plant a career-high purse.
More than he'd make fighting anybody on the PBC side of things.
All of this happened so fast. It was just the other day I was reading through tweets in reference to the fight landing on Fox. The PBC shills, the Haymanites, one that goes by the name of The Most Valid Opinion, tweeted, "You gotta feel for Eddie. He's been benched while all the adults quietly do business. Probably confused how Al Heyman works on all of these deals without grand proclamations every week and Saudi money. Light a candle for him."
What's that guy's name?
The Most Valid Opinion.
Not with opinions like that, he ain't.
Perhaps someone should tell Mr. Most Valid Opinion that more Matchroom fighters have landed that Canelo Alvarez fight than Heyman guys, Heyman fighters. You heard right. Daniel Jacobs, Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, those are all Matchroom fighters. And the story is that yet another Matchroom fighter could end up landing that fight. Whether it's Gennady Golovkin or Dmitry Bivol, it's all Matchroom.
Heyman hasn't gotten one of his guys a Canelo fight yet.
So are you actually sure that Al Heyman's wizardry at boardroom, business table, you sure you should be commending him on that? Because Al Heyman seems to be the common denominator with big fights that don't happen, like the Joshua versus Wilder fight, like the Andrade versus Charlo fight, Davis versus Loma, Davis versus Haney, Davis versus Farmer. Tyrell Logan adequately put it.
Very adequately, I might add.
I've never heard a fight fall apart involving Canelo besides this one. I wonder why. Even when Triple G wanted more money for the second fight, he got it to have the fight. Billy Joe Saunders wanted a bigger ring, and he got it. This is a PBC issue. Tyrell is bang on. Money. Quite right. That the PBC are the common denominators in big fights that don't happen. When Triple G wanted an improved split for the rematch, he got it. And when Billy Joe Saunders raised that stink about the size of the ring, threatening to walk, he got what he wanted. And all of those fights happened. This is the first time we've seen a Canelo Alvarez fight fall apart, and it isn't even the first time this fight fell apart. Hell, this fight never got off the ground. The first time that Canelo approached Caleb, or the second time, this time they actually enter into negotiations and the fight falls apart.
And the Haymanites can't blame Eddie for it.
Eddie Hearn wasn't this fight's lead promoter. He wasn't the one tasked with getting the fight over the line and seeing it through. Now, when it's Eddie negotiating a fight for his fighters with Canelo Alvarez, fights happen. Fights get over the line, like the Jacobs fight, like the Saunders and Smith fights, and like what could be either the Bivol or Gennady Golovkin fights.
The narrative pushers won't tell you that.
Those guys are still trying to devise ways to make this Canelo Alvarez's fault when it's simple, really, to the hardcore boxing fan or the casual observer. Who's been involved in more big fights? Canelo Alvarez or Caleb Plant?
Canelo has.
Who's the marquee fighter? Who's the megastar here? Canelo Alvarez or Caleb Plant?
Canelo is.
Which outfit has become synonymous with big fights not happening? The PBC or Matchroom?
Well, that's easy. That's the PBC.
And people are starting to notice. People like Tyrell Logan and several others. While the narrative pushers try very hard to play the blame game and assign blame to Canelo Alvarez, I have it on good authority. Very good authority.
The reason the fight collapsed?
The real reason. Not any of that stuff that Caleb Plant's talking about, because all he's mulling over are things that they acquiesced to, terms they conceded to when it comes to Canelo Alvarez. The real reason, I'm being told, the fight fell apart is because a source, who I won't mention here, was flat out told by a good source the issue of the multi-fight commitment was never put to bed. It sounds a lot like, based on this rumor, they wanted options on Canelo. And I told you from the beginning, Canelo ain't the kind of fighter you get options on. It sounds a lot like the reason this fight collapsed is because the people over there at Fox and the PBC wanted assurances moving forward that they would be able to do more business with Canelo Alvarez. And that is in keeping with what I always thought. You don't go this far to guarantee this amount of money, this kind of cash, pool in all these resources for a one-off situation so that Canelo can beat your guy, take his belt, leave, and then go do business with somebody else. No. The PBC don't operate like that.
Based on this rumor.
The reason I'm being given for this fight's collapse is because the people over there at the PBC and Fox wanted more of a commitment from Canelo Alvarez, and Canelo is not in the business of making commitments to platforms or promoters anymore. He wants his freedom. That's why he's willing to keep Eddie Hearn in his corner, because Eddie respects Canelo Alvarez's wishes and he allows him that freedom. He's not trying to lock him into a multi-fighter, multi-year deal.
He's not trying to backdoor him.
Eddie Hearn gets it. He understands that Canelo wants his freedom, and being able to even be in Canelo Alvarez's corner at this point in the juncture is a privilege. He's not just some fucking fighter. He's the face of boxing in this country, and people need to understand that. People need to act like it. Apparently, at least based on this rumor, the PBC wanted him for more than one engagement, and that comes as a surprise to no one, because look at the narratives that have been pushed the last couple of years. That Crawford can't fight any PBC fighters unless he crosses the street?
That all of Gervonta Davis's fights are going to be in-house moving forward.
You've seen all of this. You've heard it. So what makes you think the PBC and Fox would pull together all these resources for just a one-off situation, regardless of what was being reported? What makes you think they wouldn't want Canelo Alvarez to do more business with him moving forward for more than just one fight? You think they're going to let him go over there, beat up their guy, take his belt, then leave?
Yeah, right.
There's no way. That's not the way they do things on PBC's Isolation Island. What they want is for fighters to have an extended stay. That's the only way they'll afford them the opportunity to fight with those fighters, at least the ones they value, the ones with world titles, like Caleb Plant, who we all know would have been a betting underdog in this fight. We all know, in all likelihood, would have been stopped by Canelo Alvarez.
I know what time it is.
I'm not the least bit surprised this fight fell apart. I'm not the least bit surprised this rumor's circulating. That multi-fight commitment, that was a sticking point, and that might be the real reason this fight fell apart. No, I'm not surprised to hear that at all, and you shouldn't be either, because I told you guys this months ago. And just in keeping with the theme of all things Eddie Hearn, per tweet from Michael Benson, Eddie Hearn has said he believes Amir Khan versus Kell Brook is going to happen now. I think he will get it, yeah. I think there's a few broadcasters looking at it. I don't know if we'll do it. Still a big fight. Not what it once was. There are definitely talks. And, for a lot of people, the Brits especially, this fight is past the sell-by date. But I think it can still drum up good business if the aforementioned parties are reasonable and realistic. Nobody, and I mean nobody, should be looking for some big fat fucking guarantee in order to do this fight, because Amir Khan is past his best, and so is Kell Brook. And as long as they're realistic about that, there's an environment to do the fight and make some money. There's an environment where you can actually sell some tickets for this thing.
Because it's a grudge match.
I think there's a fleeting interest in this fight, I do. Enough of a fleeting interest that it could do well. It all depends on where it happens and who's doing it. If it's Matchroom and DAZN doing it over there in the United Kingdom, then I definitely think the fight could do well, because the cost of a DAZN subscription in the United Kingdom is cheaper even than the cost of a subscription here in America. It's not going to cost those Brits an arm and a leg to see this fight. That's if it happens on the Matchroom DAZN side of things. If it happens on Sky Sports, well, then it becomes a pay-per-view. And I don't know that the people over there in the United Kingdom want to pay per view this fight.
Pay to see these two guys.
We know that Matchroom and Sky Sports have parted ways. We know that Sky Sports has yet to fill the void that Matchroom has left behind. They went all in with DAZN. So Sky Sports is in the market for content, and they might actually be willing to put up a couple of M's for Kell Brook, maybe a few for Khan to do the fight. But who's going to be on the undercard? Not Matchroom fighters. Matchroom fighters are exclusively in bed with DAZN in the United Kingdom. So dolling up the card could be difficult, and the price tag might make the fight unattractive to the consumer. That's if it happens on Sky. If it happens on DAZN,
You get a couple of Matchroom fighters on it.
as far as Queensberry promoting the fight landing on BT Sport, put simply, I don't think BT can afford either of these two guys. I don't think BT can provide the kind of money that Kell Brook and Amir Khan are looking for at this point in the juncture, because it's very clear that both of those fighters are ready to cash out against each other. And BT ain't got enough of that cash to bring the fight over to their side. It's either it lands on Sky Sports or DAZN.
Maybe some big investors in Dubai.
Maybe they can foot the bill, and it'll just be a question of who they want to sell the TV rights to. It could be that simple. There's a couple of ways it could break down, but I'm telling you, there is a market for this fight, if you can believe that.